When I married Michael, a new phase began in my life that I had in no way expected. Not only because I'd fallen in love with the man who'd swept me off my feet at 40-something, but also because he brought along his son Ethan, who was only 22 at the time. I was wary at first. Becoming a stepmom was not something I could have imagined. But surprisingly, Ethan and I got along great. He was charming, respectful, and most importantly, he didn't dislike me for taking over the role his mother had once held. Over the years, our connection had grown into something comfortable and close, perhaps even too close. Now 25 years old, Ethan had grown into a confident and strong young man. He was warm and affectionate, always eager to help me around the house when his father was away on a business trip. I began to see him as someone to lean on, a stability I didn't even realize I needed. I found that I looked forward to his presence, that he made the house not seem so empty when Michael wasn't home. His jokes, his easy smile, the fact that he always knew when I needed help picking something up or reaching a high shelf all made our house feel more like home. I didn't realize until that day how much I had come to rely on him. But there was one day that changed something in our relationship. The memories of it are still vivid, the kind that don't want to fade. I was in my bedroom, getting ready to change after a hot shower. The door to the bedroom was slightly ajar, a small oversight on my part, but I didn't think much of it at the time. I hummed softly as I pulled on my blouse, and suddenly I noticed something in the mirror. A flicker of movement, too deliberate to be a trick of the light. It wasn't until a moment later that I realized I saw Ethan standing off to the side, his gaze fixed on me. A chill ran down my spine. There was something else, too, the unexpected warmth that settled in my stomach. I knew I should feel more outraged, maybe even indignant, but my reaction was something I couldn't define. It wasn't just anger. I felt a spark, an overwhelming feeling that I hadn't felt in a very long time. It was a feeling of being seen, of being wanted, that was both frightening and arousing at the same time. I turned around and caught his gaze widening with realization. His face flashed crimson, and he quickly stepped back, trying to hide in the shadows of the hallway. "Ethan!" I exclaimed, and my voice came out sharper than I wanted it to. He froze, backing away slowly, his eyes avoiding mine, as if he'd been caught doing the most horrible thing imaginable. And yet his body language spoke of something else: curiosity, embarrassment, perhaps even desire. I could see how his shoulders tensed, how his hands cramped, as if he didn't know what to do with them. "I'm sorry," he barely audibly muttered, lowering his eyes to the floor. He looked like a kid caught in the act, but there was a warmth between us that belied the simplicity of the moment. We both knew it was something more, something neither of us were prepared for. I crossed my arms over my chest, trying to pretend I was a disciplined person who had to set boundaries. "You better not," I reprimanded, trying to keep my voice even, trying to sound more stern than I felt. I shouldn't have told him how wrong this was, should have sent him away with a more direct reprimand. But instead, I just stood still, heat pulsing in my lower abdomen, a pulse of awareness passing between us that neither of us knew how to handle. I felt my breath hitch, my heart pounding in my chest, trying to ignore the strange sense of elation that was coursing through me. There was silence, heavy, lingering, full of something we didn't dare name. At last he raised his head, and his eyes met mine, a look full of regret, but with something else in it too. A longing flashed in them that I recognized all too well because I felt it too. It was a jolt to something deep inside me. It was an unspoken confession, a mutual acknowledgement that a boundary had been crossed, something neither of us wanted but couldn't deny. "Go to your room," I said, softer this time. He nodded, his shoulders slumping slightly, and he turned to leave. I watched him remove himself, each step slow and deliberate, as if he was hoping I'd change my mind and call him back. Part of me wanted to do that. Part of me wanted to ask him to stay, to acknowledge what had just happened between us, to understand why he made me feel the way I felt. But I couldn't. I had to maintain the illusion of control for both our sakes. I watched him walk away, the heat still spilling inside me, confusing and intense. I closed the door behind me and leaned against it, trying to calm my breathing. My mind was spinning with a lot of questions and thoughts that I knew I shouldn't be preoccupied with. What had I felt then? Was it just the excitement of being wanted, of seeing the desire in his eyes, or was it more than that? Was it the loneliness I'd denied for so long, the longing for something that had been absent from my life for years? I walked over to the bed and sat down, folding my hands in my lap, trying to make sense of it all. My relationship with Ethan had always been a strange mixture of affection and distance, close, but always with an invisible line between us that we both respected. But now that line had blurred, and I wasn't sure how to cross it. I wasn't sure I even wanted to. There was a kind of high in the uncertainty, in not knowing what might happen next. And it scared me. I knew one thing. Something had changed between us. And though I tried to brush the feeling away, to make it just another weird family memory, I couldn't ignore the attraction I felt in that moment, the electricity between us that didn't want to dissipate. It hovered in the air, in the space between our rooms, in the way I could feel his gaze on me even after he left. I wanted to believe that it was nothing, that it would pass, that we could go back to the way things were. But deep down, I knew it was for the best. I knew that once we crossed that line, there would be no going back, only forward, to whatever came next.